Pyra and Mithra, and he wished he never.
Oh shit, he's starting Kazuya? I thought Riddles was gonna start Terry.
Look what you've done.
He was watching Jin yesterday, and he's like, Jin is really good. Oh my
Yep.
god!
Yes. Show me a move.
Lopa's playing such clean advantage right now. And I like that it's not greedy in the slightest either. It's
Kazuya
just
on hit, absolutely insane. But when you get Kazuya in that disadvantage state, that's where you
Ew.
can out just like you get to connect that up.
First
right?
anti-airs with electric. Anti-airing with that move is so scary.
It's just a lot of top Kazuyas anyway. So it's kind of like now that you're getting the chance to, you're like, oh, there's a lot of tricks I was unaware of.
Oh shit.
Yeah, especially like out in
That's so
Minnesota,
much
I'm not
damage
aware
that
of
once you
anybody,
get that
like,
at like a
the top
mid
level in
percent,
the Midwest scene that plays this character. So
like it's lost off.
definitely,
Oh,
like, kind of has to learn it on the
I think
fly,
if
but
he
he's done a
charged that a
pretty
little
good
bit
job
more,
of
that
it.
would have
You
worked.
can tell because
If he gets
Sarah
another
as
one,
well
that might be
has
game.
Verps right where he wants him. This could be it, but no. Good air dodge to get away from the waft confirm.
Oh, and there's so
This could be
many
it.
stars that could go wrong for both players right now. Loaf.
Oh my god, he was slightly off.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, but you have to go for it there. You hit the up tilt.
Counting your blessings if you're Ferps.
The full waft is a little bit slower, but the trade, and it's not enough. Barely
Holy shit,
down
what a
to
game.
Photo finish there. Pixels off.
Kazuya
My
Mishima.
goodness, what a game
Win.
one.
And that's so fast too. Like, who's ready to tech that? How many people on this planet are going to be able to get that tech? You're going to see it in slow-mo again right here where Ferps just pulls the up B and then boom. There's just no time in between when the hit connects and when Loaf would have had to tech to be able to survive that. So good job.
That's
by
one thing
Ferps,
that's a little
but
bit tricky
by
about
seeing
fighting
his team
Kazuya that a lot of
Man,
people
that was soft
don't
strike,
mention
but
enough
Mario's down air,
is,
he hit but the last.
did you
attempt
know
to
that
really go
Sakurai
down.
intentionally
I don't know
designed
if he would've
Kazuya to
actually
have
reached the ledge after
virtually
sub
no
B.
hit
I
lag
don't know if
compared
he
to
had
so
a
many
drop
other
pod, so he would
characters
play again.
because that way his moves would flow similarly to the way they do in Tekken.
Kind of for the little auto, like,
that's
tech.
tech.
Like he has disproportionately
Yeah.
low end lag
Essentially
as a
no
character.
effect, like,
Because you're like,
Not just
I'm
in
going for the
general,
trade
but
anyway,
especially in the
something goes-
context
that's
of a
lot
heavier
first
character
nets when
that's
they go to Edgeguard,
a harder hitter.
Exactly, yeah. Input your up B or your recovery and the tech at the same time.
So because of that, a lot of his moves are
the game decides for you.
harder to tech
Ooh,
just because you have less time to
deciding
process
very well
that
for
you
Loaf
got
at the
hit
moment.
before
Yeah, Kazuya
you have to
decided
tech.
his fate right there.
Gonna wait for Wario to jump into it.
Yeah, if just one of those lands,
Yeah,
then
that little
that's
backstep.
fetus deletus.
Up B out of
Yep,
shield.
good call
I don't know if
out.
that was out of shield. I think he, like,
Loaf was
flipped
trying
the
to get
shield
like a
and
more
then
aggressive
yeah.
reset, maybe
It
come
worked
of Nair or
nonetheless,
something
and
like that and get a
now
combo
Loaf has an
started.
entire stock
Ferp sniffed
deficit
it
to
out.
make up.
That covers so much too. Kind of going for the upbeat at that particular timing.
Big string here.
That was
Oh,
almost
taking place
really,
on the
really good.
platform there, Loaf not waiting too long here. The Nair, okay, not gonna get the follow-up, but wow, beautiful parry into the forward smash on
Oh
the
my
DI
God.
out there. And in that situation, that electric went right into the charge.
What-
so just
what percent
hard
was
reading
that?
the
Let me
Loaf DI
check.
out there on that electric.
I feel like most people are just instinctively trying to hold out from every kill confirm in the game, right?
Right.
Almost every combo starter.
Parry
right?
electric.
So
Yeah,
I
dead at
don't know if he DI'd,
41.8.
I think up smash worked there because I think it might have. It just wouldn't have killed.
Ew.
Yeah.
Falcon Punch would not have killed there, by the
Kinda
way.
Yeah, so
In between
Bro, why is
games, too,
Kazuya's
he's
F
in
smash
good shape
stronger
right
than
now,
Falcon
going up
Punch and also
2-0.
way faster?
It's one of the
Actually, you
good
know
way
what?
to take
Kazuya
back
can have
over
it. Just let
Brazil.
Falcon
this
also
looks
combo
like,
into Falcon.
Friday first, right? Either parry or
The
hit
Brazilian player is looking real good right now.
Don't show that.
He's got a clean stock lead. He's got some extra credit.
It's like getting that kind of when your parry game's that clean. Oh my goodness,
that-
are you alive?
No,
Oh
yes.
man.
Just barely
That
perceived
almost
Wario
killed.
right there.
You know,
Kazuya's a big boy. He eats his
Finals
Wheaties.
match.
Finals match.
Let's
We're
call
with
it what it is.
We're calling
It's
that.
final
Oh,
smash meter. That's the
yeah.
Hell's Gate though, and that one should have been the
Down
kill.
air, down air.
Oh.
You can kind of checkmate Wario from that position, I think, but
He's still alive.
You're just kind of respecting it. Let's go.
Oh no! Back to the
He got the wrong
That's
hitbox.
Hitbox instead of the waft hitbox.
Yeah.
That's so unfortunate for Loaf. This could be it too.
That's
with
it.
First tech as well into the rage drive, and yeah,
Oh my God.
Oh,
Already
already got the fist
bump.
out?
instantaneously up. That
he knew
is
that set was
great
over.
job by Ferps, and I think what you were saying, Charles, towards the end there of like Ferps'
Dude, Loaf
defense
is-
being so on point. These characters
That's a
get
sad
a lot
man.
off of anything, right? Like
Right,
they're
right.
so, like they do so much
Polarizing
damage.
offense.
Yeah, but Wario should
Dude, he
be
like
the one
sunk
with the
back
better
in his
defense,
chair too.
Right? It's Pyra and Mithra, and he wished he never.
Oh
played
shit, he's
that
starting
game,
Kazuya?
so-
I thought Riddles was gonna start Terry.
Look what you've done.
He was watching Jin yesterday, and he's like, Jin is really good. Oh my
Yep.
god!
Best punish game with Kazuya because he's bringing some new heat
He
to the
was-
table.
That was Ferp's
That
tech.
was so
It's funny that both of the top two Mexican players are
Oh,
just
dead. Goodbye.
so into K-pop.
No chance.
It's like he's
He's
achieving
swinging.
that goal. He's swinging.
He's swinging
Oh,
and
God.
hitting the trip into the electric.
dead. This is
Yep,
a
the
three-star.
nair.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that was a 0 to death, and there was just nothing Spargo could do.
Hey man, he's coming for that top.
You
two
just got hit
himself.
once and you
Tied
died.
at fourth.
And you're willing to go for that smash attack. Nonetheless, kind of getting equalized by the SD, forced by the blade beam, right?
Double
Being
nair?
forced SD.
Okay, limit break is going
It's
to
okay,
save
only
him on that
57
climb hazard, so
damage.
he's going to Spargo.
Sometimes you get Kazuya, man.
Yeah.
That's just how it rolls.
Well,
in
he
tournament.
might be about to get Kazuya right now. No, does get the climb hazard.
Yep,
in
that was
time
really
to
good
avoid getting
recovery by
Kazuya.
Spargo.
Shout out to targets.
Yeah, it just looks like it just doesn't work.
That just ate through it.
Kazuya unfair.
That is why you don't play RPS with Kazuya, because you can be like, I think I know when he's
My
going to do his
ultra
move,
cool
Meaning
move
makes
cross
sense,
slap.
but
I wish Gambit
he also
had
has like a
something
lot of
like that, bro.
intangibility and a lot of
You know what?
invincibility.
That might have killed him.
So don't
I think the
RPS with this
angle is-
character.
it
That's
might
pretty
have
bad.
hurt.
It's not
That's
worth
pretty
it.
ugly.
There's an option there, just waiting
The
out the
I
lasers.
love when people do that.
Oh my goodness, that was raw. Into the electric. Are you going onto the platform?
Good DI for
Oh,
Spargo, but
snipes.
Riddles follows it anyway. He has limit break, so he's going to be able to make it back.
137 's
And this is
pretty
actually
decent
turned around
damage
into a
to
ledge trap
have.
Situation for Spargo. That's going to be the rage drive. Yep, out of the jab.
goodbye.
Great setup, and also just ignored limit.
It was like, nah, not today.
There's
You're
the
going
parry.
for
That's
electric
it.
up B.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. But, I mean, with a punish game like this, right?
And Ferps did it so much too earlier in the set that we saw him. Is this a dead Spargo? Oh!
No, he messed up the option select
Yeah.
there. So in that situation,
Yeah, that's an
you
option
actually
select
did the
where
double
if
jump nair onto the
Riddles
platform,
executes
and
properly,
Ferps is
Spargo
the
just
one
dies
who I
there.
saw on Twitter
And he
first
just has to
posted
hold
about
that.
this.
That weird interaction between the landing hitbox and the electric.
Low key, if he gets the grab,
Is he dead? There's
You
no
know,
way.
there
On
is
the
a universe in
platform.
which it happens.
No,
Oh, only
he
getting the
gets
sour
the
nair.
yep, that's
Oh,
it.
that's gonna kill him though. Jeez. Okay, Riddles.
Kazuya Mishima!
I think he invincibility through a
One
back
kill
air.
and it's over. Spargo in loser's bracket this early would be insane.
That autopilot hitbox there, so Riddles
This
had
could
access
be
to
it.
the fastball. Spargo was ready and punished
Oh.
there. Electric on the
Oh.
platform, can't get the spike back
Only
down.
65,
Does get
only
65%. Spargo blue on blue. Fine.
If he gets the grab,
Oh,
bro,
Spargo
grabbing
wanted to
there,
grab him.
Clock is ticking. He's past
Cojones.
100%. This rage drive going to go away soon. The
That's it.
berries!
Riddles defeats Spargo 3-1.
Oh
Damn.
my goodness, the parries coming out
Yeah.
from these Kazuya players.
He looks
have we
so
seen get
happy.
parried
That
on the
seems
last
to be
hit?
the new thing in the meta now.
Well, right, and
Wholesome
it's like,
Riddles
is
pop
it even
off.
safe to throw out in corner
Yeah.
pressure? Could be
An option.
Yanni legitimately can't make any mistakes.
No.
Here.
Oh, wow.
That's a start for Yanni,
win equals
but
like 60%, so he can get himself back in if he does not get caught by one of these crack shoots again. He's actually starting to bait them now.
He really is. Okay, minecart. Oh, okay.
all of a sudden,
Fair. Slick.
He thought he was in the right spot.
it's
Okay,
kind of
second
close
time around,
again.
does punish the power
It's
dunk.
kind of close
Yeah, we're at an
again.
even game. Actually, if anything, Diamond Gear is favoring Yanni right now.
Yeah, 100%. I think Riddles maybe started to get a little bit ahead of himself in route to trying to close off this
Oh,
final
nice.
stock. He said, I got my own move that
But
goes
there's
for the
go.
blocks. Here comes Go.
Go meters here.
All right, son. Basically, Yanni did not make a mistake.
I'm
Actually,
calling
he
pop
tried.
off.
He tried.
Yep.
He tried.
Oh!
What a comeback from you.
I do want to see right here. Did he time that to where there was no way out for Riddles?
Of course.
Because last time Riddles aired.
Yeah, that was just a-
straight up.
right?
That was
Yeah,
just a
no,
combo.
You take that every time.
Yeah.
Once Riddles got hit by minecart,
On the
his
left
fate
side
was
of the
sealed.
stage when the sim
An aerial
some
to
big
boot.
damage.
Okay, my God, this cannot be closer. Riddles desperately trying to close his set. He tech up his own block.
I think it's going to be so important for Yanni to actually kill him sub 100%. Because I think if he gets go meter, you're done.
That diamond sword making everything so much scarier. He comes off the stage with it. Oh, 3 hits to 97.
This is perfect. This is perfect for
Yeah.
him.
Oh, this is
Oh my god! Okay, that was actually kind of sick.
What? Wow!
Yanni
Calling
is
out the
now
timing with the
moving
nil
his way
F smash?
towards
Okay,
the
okay.
in action.
Bro, what is with the Luigi to Steve pipeline?
I would ask who Akola mained before Steve came out, but I
Just
don't even think
wait.
he was born
One,
yet,
I wonder
so.
what would happen if
probably
Elegant
don't.
decided to be a Steve.
We
main.
actually asked him that question on Tweet Talk.
DD is PT to Steve, yeah. That's like DD's one of the exceptions in some ways. Oh my god.
Well, does that count?
Talking about on your body right
I'm
now.
not looking. I'm not looking.
That's a good point.
Still alive.
One of the tools, right? To like.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
he
right.
does
Yeah,
use a
to
pickaxe
smack the
at the
lava.
end.
But he
Yeah.
keeps his F smash at the very least, which
Right,
Oh,
right.
okay, okay.
Maybe,
Jesus.
Maybe, I don't know if
Down
that
smash.
This
uses
damage.
durability on the pick.
Tournament.
bro.
Oh no, everything.
Oh my
Commented like
God.
20
It
seconds.
It doesn't actually. Never mind. It does nothing.
Oh, okay.
It does nothing.
Okay, nice.
It just looks different.
Apparently, that's look. I'm just going with the chat says. That's where the real Steve players
Oh yeah,
are.
chat knows.
True.
Chat knows
Oh,
everything.
Chat knows.
Playing Minecraft.
Watch that shield. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
bro.
that'll
In-
kill
in
for
the
sure.
midst of trying to keep
So ready to go for combos off the blocks. You got to use these characters' tools against them, much like, you know, throwing Diddy's banana
Oh, this
back.
situation
Oh.
sucks. Oh,
He
does
got
go for
so
the forward
lucky.
air to go and combo off the wall, right?
Yes.
You need to be able to do that. There's the diamond for the next stock, but the diamond's already available, and we're already on the last stock. Downer doesn't fully connect. That would have been the stock right there.
Uh-oh, diamond.
Listen, man. I feel like one thing I can definitely tell you is that Light has to go get his better instinct. Oh, you're dead.
Oh, you're so dead.
I want to slowly turn.
He has to go through his better instinct of
Coastal Diner out of
chasing
shield
someone
is
in the air.
so good with Steve.
Because, like, obviously, you know,
I refuse.
Yeah, I refuse. However, though, it is still a Cola who has those on
Yeah,
deck
those are.
every time,
That's so
bro.
scary.
I mean,
It's
the
not even
Fox there
close,
is so high on
honestly.
the shield that was just a true punish.
And it's crazy, too. I'm thinking about it, Charles. What Steve does Light have access to, at least on a consistent basis? The way he's coming off the walls, though, feels like just raw intuition.
Oh my, literally
Well,
blocked.
you can still bring it back.
I don't know. I think it was the
42.
It doesn't take too much for Light to accumulate that damage.
Oh,
But got
Yeah,
caught
that's
in.
it.
That's one habit that he
I
was
closed
getting
one
punished
away.
for a little bit, and that time it's going to
It's been good, so just end it off with a forward smash or a down smash, get some mining in, guaranteed, right?
take the guaranteed damage over, just hoping he messes up. Oh my gosh.
that DI. The
Still alive. Not over yet.
Oh my god.
All right, look at this. Even the platform, too. Akol has the platform above him, the wall. Oh, wait. Got some
That's
tricks.
it.
The up smash.
The way that he drops those up smashes is so good.
It's over.
You never expect. It was almost. What's up, bro?
That's
There
it.
Man. There it is.
Akla is
Akola
your Gimvitational champion.
Maybe with so
I think
many
he's
moments of
15 years
brilliance as
old,
well.
by the way.
But Cola just
I feel like some people think of it as being such a taboo thing to even think about that sometimes it avoids discussions from being had in the first place, which can be counterproductive, but I don't know. It's not exactly the easiest thing to navigate. I haven't made up my mind either way. I kind of just wanted to see more opinions and go from there. Yeah, I agree that Akala is definitely not being appreciated enough for being as good of a player as he is. I 100% agree with that. There are definitely games in the past that should have had characters banned, and I am concerned that we might be heading towards that direction. Like, one thing that happened with Brawl and Smash 4 is some people might be like, well, we didn't ban Bayonetta or Meta Knight, so we're not going to ban anyone here. And, like, I'm not saying we should, but I know that a lot of people in hindsight very much regret not doing that for those games. And that part of the reason why a lot of people don't want to play them anymore is because things got polarized to a point where people just weren't having fun anymore. And that's a worthwhile thing to think about. And sometimes if you wait long enough to do a ban, you end up in a situation where things get ingrained enough to where you can't ban without getting rid of too many players, you know? Oh, I was pro banning Bayo the whole way through Edge. And obviously Meta Knight also should have been banned. But there is another problem though. Like, one potential thing is you might think, well, if you ban these characters preemptively, you're doing so under the assumption that they're eventually going to be problematic enough to where it's best to nip them in the bud, right? But if you do it preemptively to where their results aren't currently at a point where there's like a massive anomaly between them and the rest of the cast, then you also can end up in this situation where, well, if you're going to ban those characters for being unhealthy or you don't like them or whatever, then you also run the risk of being able to use that kind of reasoning to justify banning other characters. Like, I don't know, let's say you don't like Sonic. You're like, well, we should ban Sonic too because they're annoying as hell. Or whatever, you know? I haven't fully decided what side of things I stand on yet, but it's something that I think is worth thinking about, if nothing else. It's also, you also can't be 100% sure that we're even gonna reach that point. It's worth thinking about because there are a lot of people who are losing their motivation to play, and it does give me some deja vu of what was happening like midway, a little more than midway through Smash 4's lifespan. A lot of the discussions that are being had now kind of remind me of that. But I also think there's a lot more like counterplay to develop, a lot more stuff to work on, and things like that. And I don't see it as blaming characters to cope. Maybe the reason you don't like a game is because of a character. Like, if a character is ruining your ability to enjoy it because you just have a miserable time playing them, then, you know, that's a valid thing. But maybe you would also feel better about it if you were better at fighting them, so. Another possibility is that suppose we lived in a world where Steve and or Kazuya got banned. Maybe Nintendo would make a new patch to like tone them down a little bit because they wanted us to have them legal, or I don't know, like, it's interesting to think about. I wish Bayo never got nerfed as well, because then she would have definitely gotten banned, because that character absolutely should have gone banned. I do think it's weird that people have this idea that even discussing the idea is taboo, though, and I think that's weird. I don't think Kazuya is on a similar path as Smash 4 Bayonet. I think Steve maybe could be. Because it does seem like Steve's meta is developing a lot faster than his counterpart. But I also think a lot of people are just terrible at fighting Steve, which definitely can make him look better than he is in some situations. I think the main thing that leads to a lot of people getting very frustrated with Steve, and Kazuya as well, is mainly just the risk-reward ratios that they have with a lot of their actions. Like, you can beat a lot of their actions, but a lot of the time they have so much more to gain when they guess right than you do. And that's what leads to people getting frustrated. But people can also just work more on just making their counterplay a lot stronger, so when they get their hits, it's a lot more meaningful and comparable to their damage output. Because one of the reasons why people don't play Smash 4 and Brawl anymore is because of their top characters. Melee is a good example where it doesn't have anyone that has stopped anyone from playing the game, but because a good chunk of the communities for Smash 4 and Brawl, you know, people who are going to stuff, retroactively wish that they as a community did that. In the case of Smash 4, since I was, you know, very actively competing in that game to the end, a lot of people were quitting because they just didn't want to play anymore. I can definitely point to a very large amount of people that just stopped playing because they're just, Bayonetta just made the game not enjoyable enough to them to where they wanted to do it anymore. And a lot of people quit Brawl because of Meta Knight as well. Because I still haven't made up my mind on where I stand on things yet, but wobbling was banned as was stalling. That's another interesting thing to think about. But is what if you were to like do something like a melee ban, which is more like a soft ban, where you're like, you decide you want to nerf a particular strategy by, like in melee, ice climbers are a little bit worse because wobbling is banned, or they came up with rules to prevent people from being particularly degenerate. Yeah, I think there are also plenty of people who just, they'll like run into a problem and they're like, no, I want to feel justified in my hatred fully, therefore I'm not going to spend the time to like fully learn counterplay. There is definitely a possibility that people just need to become a lot better at fighting these characters to a point where eventually they'll become less centralizing. It's kind of hard to pinpoint those kinds of issues, and I think this is like one of the reasons why Ultimate has some competitive inconsistencies that surprise people sometimes, is because you have so many characters, it's a lot harder to spend as much time on an individual matchup as you would in a character with less games, which leads to like the average matchup being less explored than it is in a lot of other fighting games, which leads to some situations where something that might not be as good as it seems it is can kind of be carried further because people have had less time on average to spend on really optimizing that. A good example is like Ganondorf in this game took longer than he should have for a lot of people to realize that he was terrible. Do you remember early, like kind of early in Ultimate when a decent amount of people thought he was like a mid-tier? And it only took until people like really optimized his gameplay or his counterplay a lot more until they realized that you can actually invalidate so much of this character if you just know what you're doing, but it was just hard to spend the amount of time needed to invalidate him when you're also distracted by so many other characters existing too. So it led to people thinking he was a lot better than he actually was, because he's just one character out of like 80, you know? King K. Rool's another good example. Remember when people thought King K. Rool was good? I remember those days. For the record, I never thought King K. Rool was good, but I remember a decent amount of people did. It's very hard to like come up with specific criteria. You can end up in situations where you're like, well, I think this character is causing a problem for viewership and people's like motivation to play the game, and you're like, well, we should get rid of Kazuya and Steve because of that. And then you could potentially apply that to other characters as well, and then you have to say, well, are we gonna just ban all of those too? Like, where does it end? Like, here's a good example that I think most people would agree is less extreme, like Luigi. Luigi is also a character that can just like 0 to death people and create some kinds of similar situations, but he also seems a lot easier to invalidate than, say, Kazuya, or Steve for that matter. Like, he has a lot more obviously hard matchups. I don't know, it's not the easiest thing to think about. Yeah, that's a very real possibility, Gator Mike. That's a very real possibility. Because even if, let's say hypothetically that getting rid of Steve and Kazuya would be a great thing for the game overall. Let's say if that's the case. Are people just going to suddenly think, well, now I don't want to fight this character now that these other characters have stepped in to fill the void that these characters filled? We're just going to ban those two? And then whoever comes in after that? Will the community as a collective be like, yes, this was enough, and then call it a day? I don't know. You could argue that the main thing that defines them is having a very skewed risk-reward ratio with so much of what they do relative to their counterplay. Because a lot of people very much in hindsight wish that we banned Bayonetta and Meta Knight, and if you weren't someone who was actually going to tournaments and competing, then I say this in the nicest way possible. Your opinion doesn't really matter in the subject because you weren't actually part of what was being affected, you know? Like if you weren't actively playing the game, then you have no stake in things, so. But if you were someone who was like actually, you know, a part of the community and doing stuff, then your opinion should absolutely be a part of it, or like at least considered, you know? I do think there's this kind of annoying tendency for some people who have nothing to do with the community to be like, but I don't like this, but you're not part of the community, so why does it matter? But if you go to tournaments, then yeah, it's, you know. Or even if you don't go to tournaments, but you just like grind in Discord servers with friends or enter Wi-Fi tournaments or whatever, you know? I'd imagine most of you probably play this game competitively in some fashion, like you go to tournaments or play on Wi-Fi or maybe practice with on Wi-Fi servers or whatever. I do think people should listen more to what the players of these characters say and help develop counterplay. And then of course some people will then turn around and go, well, the developing the counterplay isn't going to be that meaningful if the counterplay you're developing isn't comparable to the risk versus the reward that these characters face, which I think that's like something reasonable to think about. Like this is kind of a goofy example, but every now and then I'll hear people go, well, if you just space with your whatever tilt against Electric Wind God Fist, then you can beat it out or like outspace it or whatever. But if your move does 15 damage and if they guess right, you die, probably not really worth the risk-reward ratio, even if you might win individual situations. Although I also think a lot of people just suck against Kazuya. I can give you guys a quick rundown of how I think you should fight this character for reference. I think for the most part, you just avoid engaging him, and then when you do engage him, you're doing so because through not engaging him, you've kind of gained an idea of how they like to move and how they like to press buttons. And then from there, once you think you have a read on an option, when you do go for a read on said option, make sure that you choose your highest reward option possible. That way you're playing as close as you can to the same game that he is, where you basically try to kill him the moment you hit him. Like don't hit him with like your well-spaced whatever tilt. Hit him with a combo starter that could lead to a kill or an edge guard or something, you know? If at all possible. Also just chase him in disadvantage, because Kazuya's disadvantage is pretty ass. It's not at all inconceivable to zero death him as well. I do think there's a very real possibility that Steve as a character is complex enough and versatile enough that maybe he could just eventually have something for basically everything, but also maybe not. There's just a lot of hypotheticals. Because if enough people are wanting to like not play the game anymore because of two characters, I think it's worth having a discussion. Like I'm not fully decided yet. I do think the idea of like banning a technique is really interesting though. Kind of like the wobbling nerf in Melee. But if that's the case, how would we decide which one needs to go? If we got to that point, you know? It is also worth noting that like a decent amount of people in both Smash 4 and Brawl loved those games overall up until things got super centralized around Brawl, Meta Knight, and Smash 4 Bayonetta respectively. And maybe more people would play those games nowadays if the community collectively banned them, because I know some people be like, well, they didn't ban them in Brawl or Smash 4, therefore why would he do it here? But those games are pretty dead. And that's definitely a big reason why, since a lot of people look back with regret that it didn't actually happen, you know? And while we haven't gone anywhere near the point where these characters are dominant enough statistically to where they're comparable to that, I don't know. Banning blocks maybe? Dude. I think that's way worse than banning wobbling was for Ice Climbers. That would actually just completely neuter them. Like, even as someone who's open to the idea of the whole Steve thing, that feels like way too much. That would be like almost as bad as like banning up B for Falcon and not letting him recover anymore. He would also have no out of shield options anymore. I think something like that is something that's a lot closer to what I would consider if you were to do something to nerf Steve. One of the main things that can make Steve annoying is his ability to effectively force you to approach him, but then also just plank effectively as well. And if you can find ways to effectively nerf planking and make it to where people have to interact more, I think that's pretty solid. If you are gonna go that direction. Because if you want to keep the characters around but you don't want to ban them, that's the kind of thing that you have to think about as something a little more analogous to like banning wobbling in Melee. Because if you look at Melee Ice Climbers as an example, a lot of them can still get close to a kill off of grabs. It's a lot harder and there's a lot more counterplay, but a lot of it can still kind of happen. I feel like if you wanted to nerf Kazuya, I feel like just straight up banning Electric would... That feels like a bit much. Like, if you really wanted to hurt him, maybe like make it to where you can only do a certain amount of stock or something, but I don't know. The problem with the counterplay argument IBDW called Schultz Cloud is that one of the reasons why people still get very frustrated, even the people who are very good against these characters, is their skewed risk-reward ratios on a lot of the things they can do. Like, a lot of the stuff that you can do will just do so much less than when they guess right. Like, I've seen way too many people, with the Kazuya example, they're like, well, if you just space your move properly, you can just outspace Electric and hit him for it. And then your little move will do like 15 or 20, and then if you get hit, you just die. Sure, you can do it, but is it really worth it on paper to go for that exchange? Because on paper, neither of these characters are anywhere close to having the results that compare to like Brawl Meta Knight or Smash 4 Bayo. Young people complain. They just tend to complain more. I know I did it at that age. Yeah, I think the patch mentality is a very real thing as well. There are a lot of things going on right now that give me Smash 4 flashbacks, which made me think that, you know, it's worth at least thinking about. Because one of the reasons why things didn't get banned back then either was there wasn't enough data for it, and then by the time there was enough data for it, people were at a point where like, well, if you ban them now, too many people are just not going to play anymore because you already got rid of them. When a lot of the people who weren't playing those characters already didn't want to play anymore either. It's definitely very easy to be like, you should just learn the counterplay LOL if you're not a competitor. Because you can just not have a direct feeling of what playing against those characters at high levels is like. It was kind of funny to see like, you'd be watching like Cola during the Gimvitational and how stressed that man was the whole time. Scary. Yeah, I think the counterplay example for like Steve and Kazuya is probably the best argument if you do want to ban them, because then at that point you're like, well, if your means of realistically counterplaying their actions is so much worse than their realistic means of getting around your options, then that sucks, you know? I think Kazuya is a lot more simple to think about, but his risk reward is also more like, it's also more skewed, I think, because I think it's a little bit more obvious with him. Like, Kazuya is better at just killing you. I definitely think that Steve is better between them. I think that if you were to only ban one, it would probably be Steve. Oh, also for the record, I don't mind Kazuya's Reflector that much. Reflectors in general in this game are pretty powerful. And as far as Reflectors go, it's one of the more committal ones. Plus, I'm all for just spamming having counterplay. That F smash is so good. And there's something really funny about the complete lack of hit lag on it. You're so used to a lot of moves like holding you in place more, and then Kazuya just murks you and you just evaporate. Sometimes you can just know the matchup and it won't matter as much, because if their risk reward ratios are so much better than yours, then sometimes you can just know the counterplay and just lose anyway for very minute things. Like, I think this is most notable with Kazuya because he has so much stuff with invincibility and intangibility. Sometimes he can just go through your shit and just kill you even if you knew how to properly space in a situation. Like, they can just go through pretty much anything. They can go through a lot of things if they just know what they need to get around. And so, like, sometimes you can just know what to do in neutral, and he just goes through it anyway, and you die. I definitely don't want to end up in a Smash 4 situation where people just don't want to play the game anymore, because by the time a ban is, like, numerically justifiable, they're so ingrained that you can't do so without just getting rid of half of the players, you know? I definitely think it's a little bit goofy when people who don't even go to tournaments are, like, super adamant about what should or shouldn't be happening during them. Because I feel like that happens sometimes, and I'm like, you have literally zero involvement in this. Why should we take you seriously? And I'm not even just talking about, like, top players. Like, if you go to events and you go 0-2, your opinion matters. If you don't go to shit, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are, just that you're actually a part of the community. Yeah, that is something that is a lot of people I know are losing their motivation for the game and not wanting to play anymore because of Steve and Kazuya. And maybe that would change if they learned more things about how to fight them better, but there's also a possibility that things only get worse, you know? I mean, you could say that the problem with that kind of reasoning, Tadano Hito, is you could say that about Brawl Meta Knight and Smash 4 Bayo too. Oh, they lost sometimes to some people, therefore they're not ban worthy. When they still just had, like, really, really oppressive results and made people not want to play anymore. I had a good record against most of the Bayos in Smash 4. Should that character stayed around? Hell no. A lot of things are giving me flashbacks to Smash 4. I have a good record against Steve. Yeah, I have a really good record against Steve. I have a pretty good record on every single Steve I've ever played. I also think that I've spent probably a lot more time actually learning how those characters work, or specifically Steve. I think I understand Steve a lot more. I feel a lot more comfortable fighting Steve than I do Kazuya. But I also think Kazuya is simpler, so I don't know. I've played pretty much every relevant Steve at some point or another, except for Akala. He's really the only one, and I do well against all of them so far, so I'm certainly an example of, like, you can have a good record against Steve. I also think that you can know the Steve matchup basically perfectly, but because he has such a vast array of options, you can play around 10, but there's always something else he can do. He has basically infinite options because of the nature of his kit. So even if you know the matchup immaculately and play around pretty much, you could play around 90 different options, but then the 91st hits you and you take 90 or die. You can just say, oh, they weren't motivated to adapt, or they should have just gone better. But pretty much everyone looking back from Smash 4 is of the perspective of, if we banned Bayonetta in Smash 4, the game might still be played and it would be doing a lot better, and would have been doing a lot better at the time. And then the same is true for Meta Knight as well, where some people said the exact same thing back then too, like, oh, well, you just need to get better, and then, oh, by the time they're so ingrained, well, doesn't matter anymore, game's dead, lol, why would we bother? Either way, I think that about sums up everything. I don't really feel like there's that much more to say at this point. I guess you could do something along the lines of, like, pull top players or whatever, but I'm definitely getting some Smash 4 flashbacks, and maybe they're unjustified, but maybe not. You can know the matchup, and then Kazuya can be like, well, I'm just gonna invincible through your option and zero death you anyway. It's so easy to, in hindsight, well, you shouldn't have done it then, but it's so easy to say these things if you don't actually, like, play them out yourself.